management. Now, this is a great section to learn and just an overall wonderful topic for those of you that like dealing with accounts and security, because we're going to answer the question together: who can do what on which resource? And when you're looking at these images pop up, you're going to have a user, then you're going to have access, and then you're going to have the resource. Now, thinking about this user on the far left-hand side, that could be an account, it could be a group, it could be a service account, which is a different type of user account. So there's a lot of different things that can actually have access to something within GCP. But ultimately, it goes back to the question is, who can do what on which resource? And so what we're going to do now is jump into the console again. And I want to show you more about resource access. Now, we're going through this setting up the foundation within GCP. And as we're doing this, I want you to keep in mind here that what we're doing in this particular task is we're setting up IAM policies, which means identity and access management. And as we scroll down, this is very key to understand this topic, because when we talked about the resource hierarchy earlier, that was really talking about how to set everything up from a foundation, from departments and so forth. This is actually going into how you're giving access to it. So from here, we're going to go down and let's look at the first thing here. And I really like to point this one out. Let's look at this one here, particularly here, right here in the middle. So this GCP network admins group. So what we could do is we can take this group, which could actually have some users in it, and we would give them this role. And what this GCP network admins group will give them access to is the ability to control the networks with the compute network admin, so they can create and modify, delete network and resources. They can do all the networking stuff except for firewall rules and SSL certificates. That falls more on the security end. It also can create shared VPCs, which is basically more of a shared resource for networking. You can also have a compute security admin is what it's going to have. And that actually includes the ability to delete, create firewall rules and SSL certs. And then the resource manager folder viewer. So this role also can view folders. So anybody that I make a member of this group is going to automatically have access to this if I go ahead and click grant access here. With that being said, if I scroll down, here's some other best practice from a Google perspective to set you up with. Here's a security one that's going to give you all these additional roles. So let's say the organizational policy from the organization policy admin, that gives the permission. You can set organization level cloud IAM policy. So it's a very high level role there, or permission, that's going to give you access to grant any permission you want at the organization level. And then also when you're looking at the policy viewer, you can view it. I mean, this person can view all the security policies and the cloud IAM rules for all the resources in the entire organization. And then one other key one I'll point out with this one is, it also, if we scroll down here to the bottom, when you see BigQuery data viewer, it will grant permission for BigQuery data sets. So if somebody has databases set up and they're creating data and processing data and analyzing it within BigQuery, this role is going to have the ability to go into it and view it and get some insights on it, understand what's going on. And we'll scroll down a little more, and let's just say you wanted a real kind of like a basic role, like somebody just to view folders. Maybe it's an auditor of some sort, or maybe someone at your organization just needs to know how your folders are set up. Well, you can give them this resource manager role for the folder viewer, and they could view all the folders. So just maybe it's an executive and they want to see how the organization is set up. This will be a good role for them. And then what we just talked about there, that's at the very, very high level at the top, right? The organization level. And then from here, we would then go to the folder level. And the folders could have different policies than the organization. And you just keep going down. And the idea with this whole section of this course is really just to understand, okay, you have your resource hierarchy that we talked about earlier. And then now we're getting down into the actual managing the identity and the access underneath that resource hierarchy that we've already set up. So you would go down here through folders, and then from there, if I hit continue, we would get down to the actual projects themselves and who has access to those and what they can do with them. So hopefully this makes a lot of sense. I'm also going to go up here and click on this Cloud IAM Policies. And if you look at this is right on Google Cloud's webpage. You're going to see here that this is a good example of showing you a policy, and it shows you the members, which is a Google account, which could be any Gmail account. It could be an account that's not a Gmail account, but maybe let's say you're using a yahoo.com email create a Google account with it. So you don't have to be using Gmail. It could be a service account, which could be used to set up applications or to do different things within an application. And that adding into that compute image role, image user, that's going to allow that actual account to have the ability to use a particular compute engine image, which is great because let's say you need to use a particular version of Linux, and okay, this person, you want to give access to those in this Google account and the service account. And then from there, you'll see the same thing with the Google Workspace and the Google Group. Those could be more members. And let's say they need the compute instance admin. And then that ties into the IAM, as you see here in the middle of the screen. And when you're looking at the organization, you'll see the folder, you see the project, then it gets down to the resource. So that gives you a nice flow of how these things are set up, and you can bind these different things together. You can take several different permissions, put them together, and then control who has access to which resource. So hopefully this makes sense. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Welcome to the next section, Google Cloud Billing Fundamentals. Now in this section, what we're going to do is we're going to learn a lot about just the basic fundamental billing setup within GCP. But before we even get there, let's just start off with a question. And that question is, what are cloud billing accounts? And a billing account, ultimately, it just holds all the information for who's paying for Google Cloud resources in the projects you've set up. And it's also linked to every single project, resource, or even organization that you can have within GCP as well. So let's take a high level look at it. So if you look at your billing account, you can then attach it to an organization. And that really just applies to those of you who are working in a big enterprise organization and you have several users and several projects. So it's really designed for that type of environment. And then if you're not in that environment, the GCP project, which you would actually set up to be able to provision any type of resource, which would ultimately get you down to something like a virtual machine or a database. So ultimately the database is connected to a GCP project, which could be a part of an organization, and if it isn't, it all ties back to the billing account. So that billing account is what you need to be able to do anything within GCP, even the free services and the free tier. So we definitely want to make sure you understand that. And then the next part of this, I want to talk about the section of the exam guide, which you're going to learn throughout the rest of the section. Section 2.3. So we're going to be talking about how you can understand, basically we're going to describe how you control and optimize all your GCP costs. We're also going to talk about the different billing models and how they apply to different service classes. And then we're also going to learn more about the consumption-based use model, which applies to GCP and other public cloud providers. And then also this last one here, we're talking about the discounts. Now, a lot of you love to save money, myself included. So really pay attention here because you want to definitely know how you can take advantage of these committed use discounts and sustained use and flat rate discounts. So what we're going to do now is looking at this GCP console. We are part of an organization in this demo, but I want you to keep in mind that you're looking at the billing setup. And the reason why this is recommended to go through this process is just so that you make sure you check all the boxes so that you don't have any surprises when it's come time for billing and you know where to find this information. So the first thing we want to do is let's scroll down a little bit and look at some of these steps. So you have to create an online billing account, or you can have invoice billing, or you can use an existing billing account. Now, for most people, they're going to be setting up an online billing account. However, if you're a rather large organization, you'd probably look at setting up this invoice billing, which would be the second option here. And every month you would get invoiced on that amount. From there, once you choose that, so I chose online, then you're going to automatically see create billing account. So once I click on it, it's going to take you to a screen. You're going to go ahead and fill in all the information here. And once you fill it out, you're ultimately going to get to a screen that's going to give you an account number. And you're also going to have the ability to see cost breakdowns of any type of resource you've been running in GCP. How to understand resource usage. Now I'm excited about this part because one of the mysteries of all cloud and Google Cloud as well is how are you paying for this stuff? And let's jump into the Google Cloud website here. And I want to take two different resources within GCP and just kind of break down how you pay for this. So Google Cloud SQL. The pricing ultimately works a lot like Compute Engine, meaning that you see down here as I scroll down, you're choosing the CPU and memory, and you can choose up to 96 CPUs and 624 gigabytes of memory. Ultimately, what that means is you're actually paying for however many CPUs you choose and memory. So when we scroll down here, you're going to see the different pricing, and this is based on hourly use. And you're also going to see there's commitment discounts from 1 year to 3 year. But the key thing with all of this, and I'm going to scroll down a little bit more, is that you're actually going to pay for every single second that instance is running. So anytime you're using a resource that's set up like this, that's using this type of model where it's, by the hour or it's by the year commitment, there's monthly pricing as well. If I click on this little toggle button, you'll see what the price is per month, per different type of component of this server that we're going to be setting up. That's what you're going to pay. In contrast, if we go over and look at something like Google BigQuery, this is completely serverless. And what a serverless means is that you don't have to provision any instances or virtual machines to use BigQuery, which is nice. So all that memory and choosing your CPU and storage, you don't have to do any of that because you only pay as you use it. And so what that means is if I scroll down here a little bit, the two main components are analysis pricing and storage pricing. Now storage, if you store data within BigQuery, you're going to pay for however much storage you use. And if I click on this link, it's going to tell me there's the pricing 0.0 to 20 cents per gigabyte. And then if I go back up here and look at the analysis pricing, this is just based off of every time you run a query. So it's based on the actual bytes processed by each query. So the first terabyte of every month is free. So depending on what you're doing, you actually could pay nothing to use BigQuery at all, just depending on how much data you're analyzing when you use it. And that's called on demand. Now there's another option, and it's called flat rate pricing. And this is something where you work out a deal with Google, you work on some type of contract, and you're going to say, hey, I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars to be able to use BigQuery for a certain amount of time or a certain time per month, whether it's monthly or annually, whatever it may be. So that's how usage works in GCP, depending on what type of service you're using. Let's move on to the next section. All right, so this is a very popular topic coming up next, and that's billing optimization strategies. Just think of it as cost reduction, but more importantly, when you're looking at cost and value within GCP, you're trying to find that balance, whether you're a big enterprise or whether you're a small developer working on an application, you're trying to find that right balance. And ideally, everyone wants to be able to lower cost. So let's kind of go over a few options here to do that within GCP. First thing, let's look at right sizing. Now, right sizing is a way that you can optimize all your workloads by basically reducing some of the hardware you're using or just overall the utilization of it. And for the first thing, what we want to do, let's take a look at what that looks like in the console. First thing, this is what Google shows you on the web page here. So when you go to the Google Cloud docs for VM instances, you're going to see down here in the middle of the screen where it says recommendation, and you'll see that pop up on your VM instances page. So if I were to click on this link, it's not going to show anything because I don't have any instances running. But had I had an instance running in here, I actually would see recommendations to lower costs based on how I was using those resources. So it's definitely something you definitely want to take a look at and keep an eye on when you're using GCP. The next option we want to talk about is discounts. Now there's a lot of different discounts you can take advantage of within GCP. One is sustained use discounts, and that one is basically if you use a product for an extended amount of time, you'll actually pay a lower cost on it. And there's also committed use discounts where you're going to say, hey, I'm going to use this for 1 or 3 years and get a bigger discount based on committing to that usage over that period of time. So looking at the sustained use discount, you can see here there's a lot of different options here in the sense that the vCPUs and the memory, all those you can actually get discounts on just depending on how long you use it. And when you come here, I would always recommend coming to the Google Cloud Sustained Use Discounts page because it's going to give you the latest and up-to-date information. But the key thing is that you can get up to 30% off. So that's something to really be aware of. And it has a nice breakdown here of depending on how you use the resource, whether it's 25% of the time up to 100% of the time, you can see it's a 40% off base rate for this N1 standard 1 instance type. So that's something to kind of keep in mind and how you can save some money within GCP. The next thing is called a committed use discount. Now here you can see I can actually sign up for a commit. I can name this anything I want, and I'll just type in save money because we all want to save some money. And you're looking at the region, you can see the different type of CPU you want to use or just the generation. There's E2, there's N1. It gives you some pricing and details here on the right side as I choose those. But the key thing to keep in mind here is that if I choose a 1 or 3 year, you could see how I can save money doing this. So I'm going to be able to save money because I'm committing to this period of time. And then also, if I were to click on a license committed use discount, if you're a big enterprise and you're doing something with SAP, currently there are some options for that as well. So there's an SLES 12 for SAP and SLES 15 for SAP, and that tells you the different types, how many CPUs, how many licenses you're going to need, to purchase for that software. So these are some excellent ways you can actually just save money by, if you know you're going to be using these resources over a particular period of time, definitely take advantage of these. And the last thing is enabling guardrails. And basically, this is where getting knowledge of what's running in your environment is really key. So within the GCP console here, I'm in a billing account here, and if I go down to budgets and alerts, you can see the different alerts I have set up, some different test ones I've got going on. But the key thing is that when I create a budget, I can actually get different types of alerts. Let's just say I'll make a new name for this one. I'll say budget alert. And I could say this, it could be monthly, yearly, quarterly, it could be a custom range. So I'll just say for this month. And if I scroll down here, I'll remove discounts and promotions. You can kind of see costs right there that just showed up. And then I'll hit next. And then from here, I could say, okay, anything, let's say over $25, I can set this up. Hey, once I reach 50% of that, I can have a trigger. And what that trigger is going to do is that it's going to ultimately send a notification to all the billing admins and users. And from there, you can do some more advanced things, but for the purpose of the Cloud Digital Leader is really just knowing about how you can set up budget alerts, and then I can add in different, more thresholds here. Just a certain percentage of the budget that's used. I can kind of set it like between a forecast as well. So you have a lot of different options here, and once you set this up, I get these messages all the time where say, hey, you've reached X amount of your budget, and then you can go ahead and take action on that. There's some ways you can automate that as well, but for the purpose of the Cloud Digital Leader, it's really just knowing what are your options, how do you keep track of your budget, how do you set alerts, and this is how you do it within GCP.